What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home over at fakepigskin.com. With me tonight, it's a familiar face. You've seen him on this show hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. We've done more episodes than who knows what, but it's my buddy Ron the Maddog McCleese taking time out of the old Dynasty zone. How's it going, Maddog?
It's great to be back, Kyle. And yeah, you're right. We've definitely done a lot of shows together, and it's great to clock in again with you tonight and talk some NFL. I mean, a lot of stuff going on. I think I saw it today, Kyle. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like we're 56 days away from actually football that actually really matters. Yeah, I'm not talking about the Hall of Fame game, but that'll be nice watching my Bears play in that game. But yeah, I mean, this is the last month without football because come August we will have some preseason games, and that'll just kind of get us going, and we're all jonesing for some football. But yeah, it's going to be some fun tonight.
It's crazy, dude. I can't believe it. Like, it seems like the Super Bowl ended and everyone's jonesing. Everyone's like, oh, I need more football. I need more football. And then they're like, okay, well, there's a break. Okay, there's no more. And then all of a sudden it's here before we know it. And obviously, the NFL always stays in the news and whatnot. So we're always talking about it. We got dynasty drafts. We had rookie drafts. The Scott Fish Bowl's got a lot of people's attention right now. So there's always something in this world we call fantasy and the NFL. But yeah, I'm excited to be in. I'm excited to have you back. And if you guys play Dynasty and you're not listening to the Dynasty Zone podcast, you're doing something wrong. So check that out. Mash that subscribe button and check it out. It's doing some good stuff.
Yeah, at FP_Dynasty Zone. Yeah, definitely give us a follow. Thanks for the shout out, Kyle. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you are subscribed to iTunes, Stitcher, and all that good stuff. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff tonight. We're going to get into some running back situations, some offenses that are grabbing our attention. But before we do that, Ron, is there a guy that as the season's approached, you're getting more excited about potentially drafting, potentially trading for, potentially finding a way to get on as many rosters as possible?
I mean, there's a lot of guys that would kind of fit that description, and I think we'll get to the Bears a little bit later. I mean, obviously, I'm a dynasty guy, so for me, Anthony Miller's been definitely a rookie that I really wanted to heavily invest a lot of shares into. I feel like again he was bypassed and kind of overlooked because of the frank injury he suffered in the bowl game. That kind of set him back. He didn't have an opportunity to showcase his talents, his skill set in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. He didn't get a chance to go to the Combine and participate in any of those drills. And so that kind of set him back as far as his draft stock. So I think that the Bears got another steal with Anthony Miller, and I think that he's definitely one of those players that could make a lot of noise as a rookie. So I'm excited about him. Brandon Cooks. Go ahead.
Let's talk about Anthony Miller because he's a player I love. A player I love through the pre-draft process, and I got a lot of pushback. He's not that good. He's a little small. He's a little this. He's a little that. But the Bears are apparently on my side because they took him. I believe, in the second round. Yeah, so
traded up to get him too.
Yeah, and they traded up to grab him. So obviously they like him. Obviously they think he has a home. And when I saw they got Allen Robinson to kind of play opposite him, I thought that was a perfect fit. And obviously, like you mentioned, we'll dive more into the Bears offense in a bit, but. Any chance I get to talk Anthony Miller, I'm here for it. I love him. Obviously, a big play guy, a guy who can make plays down the field despite his small size. I don't want to say he's Antonio Brown, but he's on the Antonio Brown spectrum. Kind of a mix between Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders would be kind of where I envision him being a solid option, and I love that call. You want to talk a little Brandon Cooks?
Oh yeah, we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen tonight, but yeah, Brandon Cooks has been he's been one of those polarizing players to own, no matter what format you own him in, and people kind of poo-poo him because of the fact that he's jumped from organization to organization, and he really hasn't found a home, a lasting home anywhere. From New Orleans to New England, now the latest addition to the Rams. So I don't really look too much into that. I think that he's also, you could look at it from the other side of the fence or coin. He's a coveted type player that teams want to go out there and get. and utilize. And I think that he's definitely been a consistent, receiver since he's, come up and as a rookie. So, you look at the targets, you look at what he was able to do last year. I think, again, over 100 targets. A lot of people are going to say, yeah, he doesn't have Drew Brees or Tom Brady throwing the ball. So Jared Goff's somewhat of a downgrade. Again, I don't really buy that. He did have like 114 targets last year, which was, in that offense, he had a big opportunity to kind of showcase his skill set, and obviously one of the best quarterbacks to play the game throwing the ball. So, a lot of things, worked out right for him, fell into place. But I'm excited, and I'm not, on the other side of the fence and looking at this. I know there's a lot of mouths to feed, with the Rams, and you had the, emergence of Robert Woods, one of those USC receivers finally hit. Juju Smith-Schuster hit too, and Nelson Aguilar hit too.
Yeah, and Marquise Lee. It was a big year for USC receivers.
Right?
They all waited around long enough, and like, all right, we're all in the league now. It's time to explode.
Finally.
But like you said, there's a lot of mouths to feed in this Rams offense. Obviously, Gurley's gonna get his work. In terms of carries, he'll get 270, 280, and then he'll get another close to 100 targets. So I mean, obviously that's already accounted for. Now you got Cooper Kupp, now you got Robert Woods, and you add Brandon Cooks to the mix. I guess, is there a scenario where all three of these guys could be fantasy relevant? And, if you're drafting Cooks in round 2, round 3, does he get 100-something targets and enough production to get over 1,000 yards and 5, 6, 7 touchdowns?
I think so. Again, I'm bullish on Cooks because I think that he walks into, first off, he's had all offseason to train with Jared Goff, and I've heard glowing reports, and I'm sure you have too out there on the West Coast, Kyle, about how, he's clicked with Jared Goff and practicing, and just I think that gives him a lot more time to kind of learn the system, learn the playbook, kind of give him a head start on it. Whereas, if he was traded, later in the preseason, he wouldn't have that opportunity, and then he'd have somewhat of a learning curve. And also throw into the equation the fact that, a lot of receivers out there have gone over to the New England Patriots, and, Ocho Cinco's a great example of that. They just couldn't learn the playbook. They couldn't really get it down, and I think that this shows he proved that, he has what it takes between the years. He's able to pick that system up and adapt to that on the fly, and I think that there's no reason why he can't do that with the Rams. Yeah, I'm a little concerned, I guess, maybe about I think this is maybe more of a downgrade for Cooper Kupp, and I mean, I love Cooper Kupp, especially in Dynasty, but I think that maybe some of those targets are siphoned away from, say, Cooper Kupp type, player, and then also everyone seems to think that, okay, Cooks just is inserted into the Sammy Watkins role, but I don't believe in that either, Kyle, because these are two different type receivers. I think that throughout their careers, we've seen a consistent, output from Brandon Cooks, more of a PPR type player and machine out there making catches, whereas Sammy Watkins on the flip side has been more of that big play receiver, score touchdowns for you, red zone target, all of the above. But as far as like receptions and consistent like every week output in fantasy, he just hasn't really been that guy. So I think that, again, you can't really just say that he's going to fall into that Watkins role and that's going to be who he is, because that's not the player he is, and he's kind of proved that throughout his career. So again, I think that this might be more of a downgrade for Cooper Kupp. Now, having said that, what we might see is kind of one of those things where on a week-to-week basis, they may have more. I think there's a safer floor for Brandon Cooks in the offense no matter what. And then you also mentioned the Gurley and the targets, Kyle. I think that, they don't really want to overwork Gurley. I mean, he's a beast. He's a monster. We saw what he was able to do last year and just bounce back and be the best, show the case that he was one of the best running backs, to come in the NFL in the last few years, in the last decade. He proved that. But, there has to be some level of concern about how much work you want to give Todd Gurley. So I think some of those targets go down for Todd Gurley. Some of them go down for Cooper Kupp. And then Robert Woods, I really haven't figured out where he kind of comes into play in the equation. How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Robert Woods was a guy that I loved last year, and I was really happy to see him kind of take off. with this team, and I'm a big fan again this year. I don't know. I like Cooks. I've always been kind of pessimistic on Cooks and kind of his potential, especially where he goes. I feel like I can get similar production a couple rounds later, but McVay is so good with what he does offensively that I have kind of excitement about how Cooks may be used. But I guess if I'm drafting him, like I still want Robert Woods over Brandon Cooks, and maybe that's crazy. And maybe Brandon Cooks becomes the guy who's kind of the odd man out because, like you mentioned, Cooks is a little more Robert Woods than he is Sammy Watkins, and that could make things interesting. Maybe makes Robert Woods more of the kind of the two in the offense with Cooks or Cooper Kupp running kind of the underneath stuff. I guess if you had to pick who leads this team in targets, is it Brandon Cooks?
I think so. I'm going to stand by Brandon Cooks again, having the time to kind of get familiar with this offense and kind of just rewinding back with Cooper Kupp. I mean, I think he kind of took off. We saw him take off when there was an injury to Robert Woods, and Robert Woods was the guy, no doubt about that, in air quotes, early in the season. So, that's something too to kind of consider is the fact that maybe Cooper Kupp played into that, and the fact that with the injury to Woods, that kind of opened the window or door a little bit wider for him for more targets and to be more involved in the passing game, and also being a rookie, just kind of making that transition from FBS, playing where he did. So, I mean, that was a big transition for a rookie, any rookie out there, and for him to show what he did. Again, I think that maybe the touchdowns go down for Cooper Kupp, and maybe there's more of a focus on getting the ball to Cooks and Woods maybe when they get inside the red zone or inside the 20. Those two guys will be the main beneficiaries of that in that offense. If it's not going to Gurley or he's not pounding the rock in for 6, I think that you got to look at those two guys. And, I mean, it's going to one thing we can agree on, Kyle, and that's that opposing defenses are going to have a nightmare trying to defend all three of these guys, and obviously Todd Gurley on top of that. So it'll be interesting to watch. But I'm with you as far as kind of his. I will say this: I like him a lot, but the ADP is probably going to be a little inflated, and I don't think I would take him in the second round. So I don't know currently where I would say maybe he's more of a third or fourth round guy. And I get what you're saying with Woods because you can get him like 3 or 4 rounds later probably. Yeah. So there's just a value to be had there.
I'm pulling up ADP right now just to kind of get an idea. We'll go PPR and try and find out where these guys are going. So let's see. So Brandon Cooks is he's going in the middle of the 5th in PPR leagues, which I think is interesting and actually a lot more reasonable than I had imagined. And then Robert Woods is down in the 8th. And let's see, Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I think Kyle. A lot
Cooper
of that
Kupp is in the 8th, so and maybe let me see. Let me look at non PPR just to see where Cooks is going, because I know definitely in 5th round. So in the 5th round, if I'm doing regular drafts with my league mates, that's a lot more interesting, I think. But I know when I've done some best ball drafts and some of these MFLs and stuff as the season approaches, it feels like he goes higher, but maybe that's just an industry/Twitter thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of that name game that we all play from time to time, and obviously certain players are going to get more of that, and it's going to be affected with their ADP. So 5th round to me, I think that's a perfect spot for him, and if you can get him there. But maybe there's a lot of owners out there or league mates of yours when you're drafting that kind of fall in line with kind of that thought process that there are a lot of mouths to feed and that they don't feel like there'll be consistent production on a week-to-week basis from Cooks. So maybe that's why maybe he falls in a lot of your drafts. And if he does, then I think that 5th round would be a great spot to go snag him up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think all this Rams talk makes us think that Jared Goff could be a nice value in fantasy drafts because obviously, there was some potential for a little regression, but all those weapons with Todd Gurley still there, Goff is definitely interesting. He's currently the 14th quarterback off the board in the 10th round. That's definitely I could definitely see myself with a few teams with Jared Goff as my quarterback.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that are non-believers in Jared Goff and what he was able to accomplish last year, and I think that's going to kind of bleed over into this year's drafts, and there's going to be a lot of doubters out there. So yeah, I mean, if you're a component of waiting on your quarterback to take him, I think that he's a perfect target. You can get potentially, like you said, in maybe a double-digit round. Obviously, in your one QB single quarterback leagues, that's a prime spot to kind of pluck him and get him. So
Yeah.
again, all the weapons added all up, and it should equal success, I think.
For sure. Let's table the team talk for a little bit. I want to talk about a couple players, and then we'll come back and talk about a few more offenses. Finish up with the Bears, and maybe talk some Chiefs. I want to talk about LeSean McCoy's situation a little bit. Obviously, if you have been on Twitter, you've probably seen the pictures. If he's done what he's done, what he's being accused of, he's out of the NFL. He's a horrible person. He should be probably thrown behind bars and much worse. But I don't really want to get into that as much as I want to talk about kind of that situation. As of right now, it looks like Chris Ivory is the starter there. Do you have any interest in Chris Ivory in any format if he's the starter and LeSean McCoy is, say, suspended for the year?
We've seen some big years out of Chris Ivory, and we know that I think he's over that hill or right there at that, 30 mark, 30
Yeah.
age mark for running backs, and we know what that means. So, I like it from the standpoint that he is a veteran. He's proven that he can handle the rock. I mean, I look at last year though, and I know it's the Jaguars, and I know that obviously he was just a change of pace type running back, but he still only averaged 3.4 yards a carry. I know the offensive line wasn't great, but what I do like about Chris Ivory is the fact that throughout his career he's been able to show that he has good hands. I mean, he still had 21 receptions last year in just limited playing time, and we know what he was able to do with the Jets. I mean, and all the receptions that he was able to scoop up there. So I mean, he adds in PPR leagues, he definitely adds that, and that's a added bonus to drafting Ivory. I think I'm with you, Kyle. We don't need to get into the whole thing with McCoy, but I would say this. I mean, if there's nothing changes and we don't have any updates and you're drafting tomorrow and you take a shot on McCoy, I'm definitely handcuffing him with Chris Ivory because, again, we know what the Buffalo Bills offense, what their MO is, and that's to run the football. And we know what Shady McCoy has been able to do. I mean, this is a guy that's had 287 carries last year, 234 in the year before, and 203 in 2015. So you expect them to run the ball a lot, and especially with A.J. McCarron now under center, and just not really having a proven quarterback out there. So, with the loss of Tyrod Taylor. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I don't think they're going to really reinvent the wheel, Kyle, per se, and they're going to continue to run the ball. So for me, Chris Ivory's a great late round stash and kind of dart throw. If everything's still up in the air, why not take a shot on Ivory? I'm on board.
Would you give up a 2019 third rounder for Chris Ivory?
Whew.
If
I would have to.
let's say you're a good team that could use a little running back depth, but you have a shot at winning your league.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, if you're a contender, especially if you have Shady McCoy, that's a move I would totally make. If you don't, and you're just looking to add running back depth and looking for a potential starter, third round late, to me, like future third round picks, I throw them out all the time like they're not really worth much. But I mean, I know that there can be some value if you hit on a player there in the third round
Mm-hmm.
and you guess right. But at the same time, I think that a third round pick's not going to make or break you the following year if you don't have it. So I'm on board for contending to win now as opposed to later. So yeah, I would probably make that move if I was running back starved.
If you're a McCoy owner, are you just holding at this point, or are you kind of maybe seeing if there's, would you take a 2019 second for McCoy? And I guess on the other end, if you're an owner with a 29 second, are you willing to give that up for LeSean McCoy?
I think there's too much uncertainty right now to do the latter. I would not give up a 2019 second for Shady McCoy right now. Obviously, it could pay off, if all this is kind of blows over, or it kind of, you know, bleeds over until next season, and there's not really anything that becomes of it, or the legal process, what have you. But I just think there's too much risk involved in handing out a second round pick for Shady right now with the great unknown that is the situation we're talking about. So, um, on the flip side of the coin, yeah, I would probably take a second rounder for Shady McCoy. I know a couple of years ago I gave up a first rounder in my DLF league for Shady, and that helped me finish in the money 2 years in a row. And that was a first rounder. So for me, I knew that it was going to be a late first rounder. In my case, I think now a second rounder, if you know it's a team that's rebuilding and they're just trying to what have you. I mean, if it's a early to mid second rounder, I think that it's hard to kind of turn that down, because again, we don't know what's going to happen, and what if Shady turns into the next Ray Rice and he doesn't play another snap. So there's definitely risk there. So I guess it's good to be a year too early than a year too late getting off a player. And with Shady, it's just it could turn into a nightmare.
Yeah, well, and this is going to be an ugly offense. This could be one of the worst offenses in the league. Obviously, Josh Allen will probably start most of the games, or A.J. McCarron or Nathan Peterman. Any of those options you're not very excited about.
Yeah.
There's definitely not a lot to be hiding. And I think Evan Silva and I forget who else we're talking. Oh, Matt, not Matt, Ross Tucker, I think. We're talking about McCoy will probably start on the commissioner's exempt list, so he'll probably miss the first few games anyways. So I don't know. It's definitely something worth paying attention to. But yeah, I think I don't know if I'm necessarily giving up anything for McCoy unless it's like a third or a fourth, or some player on the back end of my bench that it's very risk. And if I lose them for nothing, then I have to be okay with it. I did want to throw out a few names. There's still some free agent names among the running backs. And, for example, so let's play a hypothetical game where LeSean McCoy is suspended. He did it, and, he's done with football. The Bills are looking at options. They bring in DeMarco Murray. Are you excited about that? Is DeMarco Murray someone that you're trading for now who could potentially take that role, or a role like that?
I think that, again, given this offense and how much they like to run the ball, given the quarterback situation, which we know is in flux right now, and there's so many question marks, there's no quarterback that they can lean on right now and say he's going to be able to challenge opposing defenses and help open up holes for the line and the running back to find those holes. But yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of do like the idea of DeMarco Murray resurfacing with another team in Buffalo. Might be just the right kind of opportunity for him, right place to do that. Again, he's one of the best one-cut runners out there. So, I mean, he fits a specific type scheme, and we saw that in Philadelphia when he went there. He wasn't, he didn't fit that scheme, and then, he went to Tennessee, and we saw that. But he's also one of those running backs that it seems like kind of similar, well, a little bit similar to Shady before, but it seems like he's kind of like one of those every other year type running backs, or when he's overworked the following year, his play suffers. So yeah. I think the fact that maybe he didn't play as much last year due to injuries, due to the emergence of Derrick Henry, and then trying to get him the ball more, this could be a player that really could help you out in fantasy, no matter what the format is. And he could definitely be motivated to kind of close out his career and kind of right off in the sunset. So I do kind of like the thought of him, getting signed to Buffalo if this all happens. And
yeah, I mean, he is 30, but he's, if he's actually healthy, because he was definitely banged up, didn't look very good last year. Obviously especially down the stretch.
Did you like him better than AP though? There.
Well, see, that's what I was gonna say. There's Adrian Peterson, there's Eddie Lacy, Jamal Charles, Shane Vereen, Alfred Morris, Lance Dunbar, Orleans Darkwa. Like, do any of those names jump out at you above DeMarco Murray? Because like Peterson is washed. I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
Shane Vereen is interesting, especially from PPR, just because if he's healthy, like there could be so many checkdowns there that he's getting 6 or 8 catches a game. Alfred Morris, maybe. I don't. I mean, it's obviously not the Dallas offensive line, but maybe he's still got a little bit left in the tank. Is there a name out of there that gets you more excited than DeMarco Murray?
One that might excite me a little bit more than the rest would be Alfred Morris because I still do think he's got some left in the tank, and he's a grinder. He's a between the tackles runner. We know exactly what he's capable of doing. He's not going to be a running back to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield, but I kind of do like maybe the idea of him resurfacing in Buffalo. I'll throw out a hot take, crazy take here, but what if, just say, I know he's suspended for the first 4 games, but what if the Saints, dealt Mark Ingram to the Buffalo Bills maybe couple weeks into the season? I mean, it
Yeah,
could happen, and
yeah.
that
I
would
mean,
be the best case scenario.
well, I don't know. I think I'd rather have Mark Ingram in New Orleans as a part-time player than in Buffalo as a starter.
Right.
But
No, from the
but
fantasy
Buff,
perspective, I'm
yeah,
with you. I'm saying from a
yeah.
football perspective
Oh,
for the Bills, I think that would be
I mean,
the
there's
best.
definitely there's some guys that we saw get drafted over the past year or two that I think could make a lot of sense. Like if you put John Kelly in Buffalo, everybody was excited about him, but he ends up going to the Rams and ends up sitting behind Gurley. Bo Scarborough in Dallas, he's not going to see the field anytime soon. Maybe he ends up there. There's a few guys that if they got a legit shot up in
How about
Buffalo,
Wendell Smallwood?
hey, I'm all for
He might
Wendell
be cut.
Smallwood. If it, Philly has a lot of guys. They obviously, it's going to be a lot of Ajayi and a lot of Corey Clement. Like that's another name that could make a ton of sense. I'm really curious to see if we hopefully the decision will be made soon, or even if it's not, the Bills make a move to get somebody in there that could challenge for McCoy's starting role.
Yeah, I mean, I agree at this point. I mean, they need to start looking at some options at least, especially, depending on how this whole legal process plays out. But I mean, they need to be prepared. I think that realistically, we probably won't see anything happen until probably August. Then when you start to see some of these cuts being made by these other teams, some of these other running backs may be available after the fact, and then maybe that's when they make a move, unless they're willing to go ahead and invest in, say, a DeMarco Murray. But
What
I
about?
mean,
I got a name for you, Amir Abdullah.
who?
Detroit. They brought in Carry On. They brought in LeGarrette Blunt. They still have Theo Riddick. Amir
So,
Abdullah
yeah,
to Buffalo as the starter as a three down back. That I don't hate that.
yeah, it's definitely not working out for him in Detroit and Motor City. So I think it's time, for them to kind of, you know, um, move on from him. And I think that they have the opportunity now with the depth they have at the position, signing Blunt, in the offseason. They have their goal line back, per se, right now. And then on Johnson, one of the more exciting rookie running backs out there. So I think they kind of, the handwriting's on the wall for Abdullah. He's going to be playing for his, position and spot on the roster, in this preseason. And I think that, yeah, if there's any team that's going to, need a running back, definitely Buffalo's got to come to the top of that list at this point. Um, with the Shady situation. So yeah, I mean, I could see Amir Abdullah actually catching on in Buffalo. Again, I don't know how much faith they would have in him as far as the goal line, short yardage work, but I mean, you got Ivory, so I mean, that could be a nice pair.
Yeah, no, it could be a definitely interesting pair for sure. Speaking of interesting pair, let's talk about a guy, the former team of a guy we were just talking about. Let's talk about my Titans. Let's talk about Derrick Henry. Let's talk about Dion Lewis. Everyone was so excited when Dion Lewis, or when Derrick Henry was freed, DeMarco Murray was gone, Derrick Henry was going to get all the work. Then the Titans brought in Dion Lewis. Obviously free agency is come and gone. We've done rookie drafts. We've kind of had time for it to process and settle. If you're drafting a Titans running back, who is it, and kind of what are your expectations with that backfield?
Well, I would have to say at this point, I mean, I think the handwriting's kind of on the wall. Henry is definitely the future of this organization, and I think he's going to be given every opportunity to be that, you know, that workhorse type running back. But having said that, I think that there's a reason why they signed Deion Lewis. They didn't really have that running back to, that's dual threat that can catch the ball out of the backfield. And as elusive as Deion Lewis has been, we've seen some really, this past season in New England, he kind of just took over. So I think this could be a really dangerous duo.
Hmm.
Maybe it turns into more like maybe a 60-40 type split with Henry being on the heavier side of those carries. But I think that you don't sign Deion Lewis if you don't expect to use him and use him to his skill set and his talent. So I think that again, he's going to be a dangerous player and definitely make this offense a lot more dangerous out there. So I think that again, if I'm drafting like tomorrow, I'm probably going Henry. Having said that, I think Deion Lewis you'll be able to get a little bit better bargain on even
Hmm.
in PPR leagues. So I do like the thought of maybe passing up on Derrick Henry just because he's going to be, probably going to have to pay like a third round, fourth round
Yeah, so
pick on him.
Derrick Henry is currently going 401 in PPR, 38th overall, and then Dion Lewis is going at the end of the fifth, 58 overall. So you're getting almost 2 rounds difference by taking Dion Lewis as opposed to Henry, who, if you're asking me, I'm kind of with you on the 60-40 split, but I think Dion Lewis is the guy getting the 60, not the 40.
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, I hope you're right because I definitely have a ton of Deion Lewis shares out there, and I think that this is, last year he saw a career high 36% of the offensive reps in New England. That could have been due to a lot of the injuries that they suffered at the position with Burkhead and a lot of those guys going down. But he definitely, rose to the occasion, and he was the guy. So I mean, he produced some pretty big weeks down the stretch when you needed him the most. Um, you know, to get into the playoffs, and then when you're in the playoffs. So he's definitely the type of player in the PPR leagues you want to target. And I think your Titans are still going to run the ball a lot, Kyle. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
could see.
curious because obviously they brought in LaFleur, who was the guy that helped make the Falcons go, that turned around Jared Goff and the Rams last year. I really hope to see strides from Mariota, but when you have when you bring in Deion Lewis and you already have Derrick Henry, I kind of think you're right. Like I want this team to be more dynamic on offense. I definitely think there's opportunities to throw with Corey Davis, Chard Matthews, Delaney Walker, all that. But it's probably a lot less running than we've seen in past years. But it's still going to be kind of the focus, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and to your point, real quick on the percentage, last year Murray was 63% of the offensive snaps to Henry's. It looks like um, less than 40. So I
Yeah.
mean, that should tell you a little bit. But again, it's one of those things where it does. Has Derrick Henry, improved? Has he shown the process? Has he gotten better? And if so, the coaching staff trusts him more to take a bigger piece of that pie. So I think that's going to come into play. And if he doesn't show that, then yeah, I think maybe you're right, Kyle. Maybe it is more on the flip side, and Deion Lewis is getting 60% of those snaps. So, in which case, I think he could excel.
Yeah, well, and Henry was a guy last year that they brought in kind of at towards the end of games as kind of the finisher, and I could see them putting him in a similar role this year, where maybe Dion Lewis gets 80% of the first 2.5 quarters, and then Derrick Henry gets 60 or 70% of the last quarter and a half, where so it'll end up being kind of a nice mix, but. Derrick Henry finishes strong and hopefully gets one of those nice long runs for a touchdown and kind of makes for a nice fantasy day. If you're doing a redraft league and you're sitting there end of the third, beginning of the fourth, Darius Geis, Derrick Henry, Alex Collins, Rashad Penny, Jay Ajayi, who are you taking?
Um, I'm actually going to go away from the rookies in redraft, and I'm going to probably go with Henry because I think that with this offense, they're going to make a commitment again to running the ball, and I think that he's going to be given that first opportunity. And I feel better about the weapons, and obviously you brought up the pass catching options they have too. So I feel like we're not looking at a one-dimensional type team. I would say Penny would be a guy that really does entice me, but that offensive line, they didn't do really anything to address that. Russell Wilson's still going to be running for his life this year, and I'm not getting on board. And also having some other backs there still. You still have CJ Procise. I mean, You still have some backs there that could cut into Penny's workload and definitely early on. So I think
Yeah.
the safer pick for me would be Henry.
The Chris Carson thing scares me a little bit, but Rashad Penny's absolutely going over Derrick Henry for me. And honestly, I'm taking Alex Collins too if I take a running back in that range. I'm a big Alex Collins guy this year. Like I take him over Darius Guys, I take him over Joe Mixon, obviously over McCoy at this point. He's probably he's 15 or 20 for me among running backs. So
So it
I
sounds like you've given up on the Kenny Dixon.
yeah, dude. I was talking to somebody on about him on Twitter, and like I love that guy. I think obviously the talent's there, but I don't know, man. I don't know if we're ever gonna see him on the field and involved and kind of getting any sort of legitimate workload. And if Alex Collins hadn't broken out last year and they were still doing the mess that was Danny Woodhead and Buck Allen and all these guys, then I say okay, there's an opportunity. But I think Alex Collins is legit. I mean, I've liked him since he was on the Seahawks. It finally got a shot, and he's explosive. He gets big runs. He physical running back can be a big part. And I expect the Ravens offense to take a step forward with all the talent they brought in. That Alex Collins, I think, is due for a monster season.
Yeah, I mean he showed that with Arkansas, and obviously sharing the workload with Jonathan Williams. I always
Mm.
thought that he was the better running back out of the two, and I think that he proved that obviously last year. I guess the only thing in the back of my mind is we've only really seen that one year sample size from him, and maybe he's able to duplicate that this year, and they kind of stick with him, and he's able to put up some big numbers.
Yeah.
So I do like him from the vantage point that I think that he's definitely their best option right now, and he's going to be the guy that's more than likely going to be the guy getting the short yards, the goal line carries, and scoring the touchdowns for them, which is the lifeline of fantasy football. So again, that's probably not a bad call to go with Collins,
Yeah.
maybe even over Henry, but I just see a little bit more upside from Henry. I guess is the only thing.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think they both have a lot of risk, but also a lot of reward. And I trust Collins to get more of the workload. And like I said, I like Deion Lewis, so I'm if I'm drafting, I'm taking one of Penny or Collins, and then I'm probably taking Deion Lewis around later because typically the way I start my draft is I'm going to hammer receiver early. So these are the guys in the range that are going to be enticing to me, and I'm going to want to get two or three of the Rashad Penny, Kenyon Drake, Alex Collins, Deion Lewis. If I can get a couple of those guys, I'm going to be very excited with kind of the direction my team is taking.
Yeah,
Sp-
definitely.
Speaking of exciting directions, let's talk about your Bears, dude, because um, obviously bringing in Matt Nagy over John Fox, like our teams went from probably two of the worst, most outdated coaching staffs in all of football to two of potentially the most excited, young, open-minded offensive coaches in the world. And Matt Nagy, what he did with the Chiefs last year was impressive. Obviously, I like LaFleur. They brought in Allen Robinson. They brought in Anthony Miller, who we'd already talked about. They brought in Trey Burton. Another year for Mitchell Trubisky, who is still somehow going as QB 25, which I don't get. Like I would be taking him over. He's definitely a guy. Like if I enter the season with Trubisky as my starter, I'll be pretty okay with that. So I guess talk to me about your Bears. What are you most excited about? What are you expecting this season? All that good stuff.
But I think it all starts with, as you brought up, just the change in the guard as far as the coaching staff goes. I think the only coach that kind of stayed was their defensive coordinator, and everybody else it's just changing. A totally new system, and then you give Trubisky exactly what he lacked last year, which was weapons. I mean, he
Yeah.
had no weapons at all, no receivers to throw the ball to. This is a make or break season for Kevin White, and we don't even at this point care about Kevin White because obviously you mentioned Allen Robinson. That was a major acquisition. We needed to go out there and get that wide receiver one. We got him, locked him down. He just needs to be healthy. I mean, we know what he's done out there when he's healthy, and come on, man. I mean, I think Trubisky's better than Blake Bortles. goes in. We saw what Allen Robinson was able to do with Blake Bortles, so a quarterback not to his level. But as far as the other weapons, yeah, I mean, I think you have a new running back coach too. That's going to be interesting to kind of see how they divvy up those carries and if Jordan Howard can improve in the passing game. Because if he doesn't improve, Tariq Cohen's a sneaky type player that I really like this year. He gained 10 pounds in the offseason, claiming 10 pounds of muscle. So I like that he's getting stronger. For the NFL, which where all the players are faster, stronger. I like seeing that, and then the addition of Trey Burton, I think just kind of is icing on the cake for this team. So I mean, Trey Burton is going to be able to help them out a lot where they lacked after losing Zach Miller. Trubisky really didn't have a tight end, proven tight end outside of throwing to a rookie. I think Deion Sims is still on the roster, and then obviously a rookie in Adam Shaheen. So I think Nagy ran 60% of his plays last year with two tight end sets. So I think that you're going to see a lot of that too with this team. And if Shaheen takes that next step forward, then you have two tight ends that are really viable. So, I mean, I think you just add up all these weapons, and I think that you have an offense that's going to be able to compete in the NFC North, where you're going to have to put some points on the board to to keep up with the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings and even the Detroit Lions, who are going to score some points out there. So, I think I'm really excited about the weapons.
Yeah, I love the weapons. I think Trubisky has a chance to take a very Jared Goff-like step in year two. I expect to see a much improved season and for him to be a guy that fantasy owners are using down the stretch. Now you mentioned Tariq Cohen. I think we saw it last year where the games where the Bears were down big time, especially early, we saw a lot of Tariq Cohen. But in the games where the Bears were competitive or when they got the lead, there was a lot of Jordan Howard. And I think that could be the case once again this year. Like, Jordan Howard's a guy that I think is going about a round or two later than he probably should. And I don't expect him to catch the ball a ton, but I think he's going to do enough on first and second down to be worthy of a third or a fourth round pick in kind of the range he's going right now.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that you're hearing a lot about right now is just people just kind of downplaying Jordan Howard, his skill set, and they're not really looking at what he's been able to accomplish in 2 years in the NFL. I mean, this guy's rushed for over 1,100 yards in both seasons, and the yards per carry went down almost over a full yard from 5.2 in his rookie year to 4.1 last year. You didn't see as many big plays, but I'm with you, Kyle. We saw him in garbage time scoring touchdowns, and that was where he improved. He went from 6 rushing touchdowns to 9 this past year. So, again, I think that's one thing to look at. The receptions, everyone's going to beat him up for that in PPR leagues. They're going to downgrade him, and I think that's wrong. I think that he is still, their workhorse running back, and I think Tariq Cohen is going to have that role, and they're going to utilize him in a lot of different ways and draw up plays for him. But at the end of the day, Jordan Howard is still they're between the tackles runner, the guy that's going to get it done, and the guy that's going to find the end zone for them more often than not. So, I mean, if people pass up on him, I'm all for taking him.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously going to be an improved offense, so more times at the red zone, more times the chances to score. So maybe, his touchdown, in terms of touchdown regression, goes down a little bit, but if they're going to be in the offense so much more, or in the red zone so much more chances at touchdowns that he could be in that 8, 9, 10 range again and, be right there, especially with this team. I think their defense is better. They added, to that, so they're going to be more competitive in more of these games, and I'm really excited to see where Jordan Howard goes. I'm really excited to see if Trey Burton can, put all the skills that we've seen, at moments in Philadelphia to become Travis Kelce light. Like, I think there's a lot of room for optimism and excitement and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I think he's going to help Adam Shaheen a lot too, as far as his maturation process and just kind of learning curve that is the learning curve for the tight ends coming into the league. So the 2 to 3 year window is pretty much in play for most normal tight ends, and I think that Adam Shaheen is definitely going to learn a lot from Trey Burton, and that's going to be good for him as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Ron, this was a lot of fun, a lot of good chatter, and we'll definitely have to do this again as the season approaches. But make sure you guys are all following Ron on Twitter at MaddogFF. You can see the Twitter handle below his floating head. Tell everyone where they can listen to the Dynasty Zone and follow you guys on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely, Kyle. At FP_Dynasty Zone, and also give my co-host a follow. Tom Corson at Dynasty Infidel, and Chris Donikian at Chris Donik. That's Donik. Those guys know their Dynasty, and they're great co-hosts of mine. And we've just been doing a lot of over-unders lately, Kyle, and I know you know that from our days doing a lot of shows together. And that's a lot of
Absolutely.
fun. And obviously, we're going to have all these shows coming up, like on the AOP. I'm sure you're going to be doing a lot of player position battles and camp battles and stuff like that. Because I mean,
Yep.
as we draw closer to the start of the season, that only heats up, Kyle. Right?
Absolutely, and I literally cannot wait. I'm getting so excited. I think I'm going to be doing as many best ball drafts, doing obviously Scotch Fishbowl, all that good stuff. Getting excited, placing my poker chips on the table, and seeing how it comes out. But Ron, once again, thanks so much for joining us, and absolutely we'll have to do this multiple times as the season approaches. It's always good times.
Definitely great times.
All
Glad to
right.
be back.
We are gonna be out. We'll be back. I've been doing a bunch of videos for the Scott Fish Bowl, so with different owners. So if you are in that league or you want to know more about kind of unique scoring leagues, talking about some players on there, check those out on the YouTube page, on the iTunes feed. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're leaving a review. Leave comments. Leave thoughts. Let us know where we're crazy and where we're on the money. But for Rondon Maddog McCleese, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.